Hello and welcome to our presentation this afternoon. My name is Rich LaBelle and I'm the CEO of Family Network on Disabilities. We're going to be talking this afternoon about making your case and tools for effective advocacy. Essentially, this presentation is designed to help grassroots advocates understand the rules for public policy advocacy, whether it's before Congress, whether it's before school board, maybe the executive branch, whatever it may be. You can use these rules and you can use these strategies and tips that we're going to be going over this afternoon in basically any type of forum in which you want to advance issues that are important to you. A lot of my comments, especially for this particular presentation for Children's Week, are designed to be addressed specifically to the Florida legislature. But again, these are things that you can use throughout your advocacy. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, let me just say that to access all the information that's available for this presentation, in the registration box for the presentation, you'll see a link to a flyer. If you click on that and register for the presentation, then you'll get access to all of the materials, the copy of this presentation and supporting materials that we'll be talking about. So if you could go ahead and do that, that would be very helpful. Now, we'll go over today the importance of advocacy, first of all, and then how does one become an advocate? And it's very simple. Basically, it's you simply decide that you want to make your views on a particular issue heard. We'll talk about how you put together your personal story and how you communicate the core of your personal advocacy effort. And then we'll go over some tips and strategies in terms of dealing with policymakers, dealing with legislators, dealing with their staff. Before we start, I want to make sure that the most important thing here is that you are registered to vote. If you're not registered to vote and you're 18, make sure that you do get registered to vote. Make sure that you get your friends and family registered to vote, and that you do that as quickly as possible. Why? It's a very simple reason. Voting is one of the two most effective ways to influence. The other one, besides voting, is money. And most of the folks who we work with don't have a lot of money to contribute to candidates, but you do have a vote. And a lot of the elections in our communities and in the state and in the country are decided by a handful of votes. For those of you who remember the 2000 election, it came down to where the entire control of the lower house of the state legislature came down to picking straws or picking names out of a candidate for a particular seat were exactly tied in the vote count. And Virginia state law said, okay, well, you had to pick names out of a basket then to decide it. They did that, and that one seat decided, okay, which party was going to control the lower house of the legislature. So everybody's vote counts, and you never know from one election cycle to the next where your individual vote might be literally the deciding vote in a particular election. And again, if you have yourself registered, if you have your friends, if you have your family registered, those who work with you to care about and work on a particular issue, then when you go and meet with legislators, when you go and meet with their staffs, and you can say, look, it's not just me that I'm talking about. It's not just me that I'm representing here, but I'm, here on behalf of a number of other people who are all registered to vote and their families. And that gets the message across. So please make sure that you're registered to vote. My favorite bumper sticker is one that says, the world is run by those who show up. And that is absolutely true when it comes to policymaking. The importance of that is hard to overestimate. I heard from a senior staff member to a senior member of Congress a few years ago, who said that if she and the other members of the congressman's staff, and this was a nationally known member of Congress, if they heard from more than 5 or 6 people on any particular issue, whatever it might be, then that went immediately onto their hot list, their watch list, because hey, people care about this particular issue. On most issues, she said that they don't hear from anybody. They don't hear from constituents. The only people that they hear from are paid lobbyists who are there to try to persuade the congressman one way or another. So you show up, you make your voice heard, you make your concerns heard, have an influence in public policy. It's that simple. I've been very fortunate here in my work with FND, and prior to this, I've been involved in the advocating before the legislature and before Congress for virtually my entire adult life, and I've been very fortunate to be the part of a number of efforts where we have gotten legislation passed, or we have stopped legislation from being passed that would have been harmful to our community, and we've made real progress, and we've made real changes. The rights and the lives of people with disabilities in particular, and again, that's just because we chose to get involved, not because we have any particular connections or anything like that, but we chose to make that difference, and you can do the exact same thing. Learning how to advocate, especially before the legislature, is you need to understand the rules. You need to understand key terms, key words, but initially it's important that going in, it's like, okay, well, this, you may feel that, wow, this can be overwhelming. I don't know where to start. Well, again, the first step is just making your views heard. And then how do you go about that? How do you go about that effectively? You need to know what the rules are, and you need to know how the process works, basically. So, the civics class in high school that you took, and the best way that I've ever seen for advocates to get a quick grasp on how things work is link up with, and in Tallahassee and in Washington, there's all sorts of folks around who, if you buy them a meal or buy them a drink, if that's what you'd like to do, they can give you a 30-minute rundown brain dump on, hey, this is how things work. These are the folks that you need to talk to. This is how you need to track it. These are the important deadlines. that you need to make sure that you meet. And all of that is really important because when you're working with a legislator, when you're working with their staff, that they swim in. That's the process that they live by. And you're going to need to know the written and the unwritten rules. And really, it's the process of how things work and how things are actually done. So I'll give you an example of an unwritten rule in the Florida legislature. If you are advocating on an issue and you draft some legislation and you find a sponsor for it in the House of Representatives, that's great, fantastic. However, if you don't also find a sponsor in the Senate for the identical bill or very close to the identical bill of what you want to have in the House, then that's a big problem. Because we have committee weeks that are tacked on before the session, but pretty much we have a 60-day legislative session. We have deadlines for filing bills, and we have a lot of other restrictions on how things proceed through the legislative calendar. So what happens when a bill is introduced in Florida? Let's stick with the House. It'll be introduced in the House, and the Speaker of the House and his leadership team will assign it to committees to review it. Most of the work of reviewing legislation done in the Florida legislature in committees. So you need to be aware of that. And so if, for instance, the speaker assigns your bill to, let's say, 3 or 4 committees, in the 60 days of a legislative session with literally hundreds of other competing bills, it is very, very difficult for your legislation, your bill to be heard by all of those committees, then get on the general House calendar, be voted on by the full House, then be sent over to the Senate and start the process all over again. Basically, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen in that time frame. So you need to have, it's called companion bills, you need to have companion bills running in the House and the Senate at the same time, making their way through the legislative procedures, making their way through the various committee stops that they have to go through. And hopefully, at the end of the situation, you'll have one that will make it to the finish line first, and that can be used as a vehicle for the other chamber to simply say, okay, yeah, we like that, or we'll adopt that language, or something like that. But you can't just say, okay, fine, we've got a sponsor in the House, we send it over to the Senate, and it'll start all over again. It's not going to happen. So that's an example of an unwritten rule. Another example, let me just give you a touch on committees again. Another example is a good way and an effective way to kill a bill without anybody's fingerprints getting on it is to assign it to a number of committees. The effect of that is, again, because of the limited legislative calendar, because of the 60-day session, if your bill is assigned to 5 or 6 committees, it's going to be virtually impossible to make it through all of those committee stops and then get to the floor and then be voted on and then go over to the other chamber and so forth. So, oftentimes if you get a lot of committee assignments, what that will say to you is, okay, look, somebody in that chamber's leadership has an issue with this bill. Because if they liked this bill, then we probably only get 2 or 3 committee stops. And 2 or 3 committee stops, you can do that real easily in in a 60-day session. 4 or 5, 6 committees, no way. So that's an early indication to you that you should try to find out what's going on there. And you should try to fix what your legislation. Maybe there's an issue that the leadership has with your sponsor, your chosen sponsor of the legislation. That's entirely possible. Maybe it's to do with something entirely unrelated to your bill. But whatever it is, it's holding up the progress of your bill, so you need to find out what it is and do whatever you can to correct it as quickly as possible. Because again, the clock is always ticking in the legislature. So be aware of that. Now, when you're meeting with legislators, and I see this a lot with advocates who come to Tallahassee or who go to Washington to meet with their congressional representatives, you may feel very strongly that your issue is so important that you need a minimum of an hour of your elected representative's time to really fully discuss this issue. And that may be perfectly appropriate. That may be what it takes to really delve into the issue and make sure that they understand why you feel the way you do and how important that this is to you. The reality is, especially in the legislature and oftentimes in Congress, when Congress is in session, you're not going to get anything close to an hour's meeting time. My rule is take whatever you get. If you say, I want an hour's time, and they come back and they say, well, the senator does not have any time to meet with you, but you can have 5 minutes to meet with one of their aides, take it. Take it and run with it. It's not personal. They're not saying they don't like you, they don't like your issue. It is simply a function of, hey, we have very, very limited time. We've got lots and lots and lots of folks who want to talk to us. So we need to make sure that we use that time as efficiently as possible. That's what it says. So just be aware of that and know that again, it's not personal. Take what you can get and make the absolute most of it. When you go into a meeting with a legislator, make sure that you know your stuff. Make sure that you know your stuff frontwards and backwards. You're going to have time to do research. You're not going to have time to look stuff up. Again, that representative, that senator may only have 5 minutes for you. The staff member may only have 5 minutes for you. You're going to have to hit the highlights. You're going to have to hit your strongest points to get them to support whatever it is that you want. And it's going to have to be quick, and there can be no doubt. And like I said, no scrambling around trying to find information. You need to know your stuff cold. Now, that has been said, critical, so that if you get asked a question, either in a meeting or in an email or a call or whatever it is, if you get asked a question that you don't know the answer to, do not make up an answer. Do not pull it out of the air. Do not say anything that you're less than certain about. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you saying, I'm not sure, but let me look that up and I'll get back to you. And then make sure that you do exactly that you find out the answer and that you get back to whoever it is that has posed that question to you, because that is crucial. If you pull something out and just say, "Oh, the answer is X," and it turns out the answer is not X, that can be a big problem, because again, the legislative staff doesn't have the time to go behind you and check what it is you're saying. The representative or the senator doesn't have time to do that. And if they sign on to support your cause, they're going to be using those types of facts, those types of nuggets to persuade others and to persuade their colleagues to vote the way you want them to and that they want them to support this issue. So if you give them some information that is incorrect, then that can blow up in their face. And if it blows up in their face, you have a huge problem on your hands. Because the last thing that you want to do is lose your credibility. And Tallahassee, the legislature especially, is a small town. Congress is a small town, believe it or not, and word gets around really, really quickly. That if John Smith is up there and he said something to Senator so and so, and that was incorrect. It was just something he made up, or it was not accurate, and the senator went on the Senate floor and got up and said, "Oh no, here, this is, I can show that what you just said is absolutely incorrect. Just go home. You will have lost your credibility, and there is no point in continuing your advocacy efforts, at least for that legislative session." So that's very important. When you're meeting with legislators, and again, if you just get time to meet with their staff, that's perfectly fine. And lots of times, I prefer to meet with members of their staff, because lots of times they are the policy experts on a given topic, and they will get into the nitty-gritty with you, and there's also no fluff around it. When you're meeting with the elected representative, lots of times it will be along the lines of, "Hey, how are you doing? How are you finding things in Tallahassee or in Washington? Tell me about your organization, on and that sort of thing." Much more of a personal engagement rather than dealing with the issues. And sometimes that's intentional to run out the clock. Because if you know that you want them to support an issue that they have no intention of supporting, they'll talk about everything under the sun rather than that issue, because they don't want to be in the position of having to say no to a constituent's face and have you go away disappointed. So if you never get to that point, if you never discuss the issue and you just run out of time, that's fine. That's, it's not a problem. But with the staff, you get right down to brass tacks immediately. And you can dispense with all of that, and you can find out, okay, which way is the senator going to vote on this? We really need, their support. And then the staff can tell you, well, yeah, I'm going to talk to my boss, but I'm pretty sure he or she is going to go along with this. Or, we've gone over this issue already, and, I talked to the senator, and she really has an issue with X. And if you can do something about X, then you'll have her support, and she can bring along, 5 or 10 votes along with her. That's crucial. That's absolutely crucial. And, lots of times people talk about the importance of getting to yes. I like to talk about the importance of getting to no when we're dealing with legislative matters, because again, in the legislature and in Congress, people don't like to say no to your face, regardless of who they are. So they will vote against your bill. They will not support it. They will try to kill it, but they don't like to tell you that oftentimes to your face. So you need to, in meetings and in emails and in exchanges with legislators and their staff, you need to get to the point as quickly and respectfully as you can of finding out, okay, are you yes? Are you no? And if you're no, why are you no? Because if they're no, lots of times, over 95% of the time, I would say, lots of times, it's about something that is absolutely unimportant to you. A bit of difference to your bill, to your family, your community. But so they may say, hey, look, I like this bill, but I just can't support it because of take it out, or we'll change it. What do you want it to say? Not a problem. We'll agree to that. Great, fantastic. You've got my support, and there you go. But if you don't get to that point, if you don't find out there's a definite yes or there's a no, and then what's the problem? If you never get to that point, you will not be nearly as successful as you could be. So, I've heard many people say, "Oh gosh, I don't want to hear them say no. I don't want them to tell me no, they're not going to support my bill." You need to find that out. And if you really can't stand somebody saying, "No, I'm not going to support your bill," you shouldn't be doing this kind of advocacy. Um, Several years ago, we were working on legislation to ensure voting accessibility for persons with disabilities. And our running joke was, if we didn't have, three or four people, all the time telling us that our bill was dead, we started to feel nervous. Um, and the bill passed both houses unanimously, by the way, and was signed into law by Governor Bush. But that was the kind of atmosphere, and that is the kind of atmosphere you can operate in lots of times. And you take things step by step by step. So you get and you work the committees, and you get through one committee and you go on to the next committee, and so forth until you get all the way through and you get to the end. And we had always said about that bill in particular, if we can just get it onto the floor, it's going to pass. People are not going to vote on the record against this piece of legislation. And even though we had people telling us all the time, oh no, it's dead, it's dead, it's dead, never going to go anywhere, we got it to the floor, and that's exactly what happened. It was unanimous, and people did not vote against it because either party, they didn't want to be against that kind of legislation. A lot of the issues that we work on are exactly that type of thing. A lot of the issues that you care about are exactly that type of thing. Doesn't matter what the party affiliation of a legislator is. He or she doesn't want to be held up as being against whatever that good public policy issue is. So keep that in mind. Excuse me. So, one of the very useful tools that I take with me into meetings with legislators is what I call a one-pager. And a one-pager is simply a one-page summary of legislation, or of a proposed bill, or your issue on whatever it is. And I do that because I want to make sure that the legislator and their staff have something to remember me by, have something to remember my position on a particular issue, because they have literally hundreds. And if you go in and you meet with them and you spend 5, 10, 15 minutes, maybe even a half an hour with them, and you walk out, there's a bunch of people sitting outside their office still waiting to talk to them. And that's going to go on all day, every day. So If you don't have something to leave with them, you're going to walk out, and then 2 or 3 days later, they're going to have met with literally hundreds and hundreds of other people about various other issues, and you're just going to be lost. Your issue is going to be lost. They'll be like, oh, yeah, who was that who was in here? What was that they were talking about? Yeah, there was something about this particular bill, and then it's on to the next thing. So I have a simple one pager. I put our organization's logo up at the top. I put my name, my title, my personal contact information, including my cell phone, right underneath that. And then I have a simple statement of this is the issue. You know, vote for, House Bill 123 because boom, boom, boom. 3 bullet points. No more than 5 bullet points on any particular issue. The less that you can keep it to, the better. Again, go with your strongest stuff, your best points. Make it as simple as possible. This is not the place for citing paragraphs of policy statements and so forth. So make it as simple as possible. And then again, what I like to close with is my name, my logo, my contact information. Again, I want there to be no mistake about who it is who's been there to advance this issue and how to get a hold of me. For good or for bad, if they don't want to support the issue, they don't want to support the issue, but I want them to remember that this is who I am, this is what I was advocating there for. So please keep that in mind. Offer to be a resource for the individuals. Offer to be a resource for staff members. Offer to be a resource for legislators. In the Florida legislature, particularly, staff positions are very, very limited. A House member may have, unless they're in a senior leadership position, they may have one staff member who may well have been their campaign manager, a crucial part of their political organization, their political family. So they don't have a lot of resources, and again, don't have a lot of time to be chasing down various things. What I typically do when I go into a meeting is, I'll say to the staff member, "Thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me. Family Network on Disability, we serve your constituents who are persons with disabilities and their families and the professionals who work with them. Please let us help you serve those constituents. If you have folks who we can help, questions about issues that come up that are affecting your constituents with disabilities or their families, please give us a call. We can help you with that. We've got, again, over 30 years of experience, and we are part of national networks that we can draw on to help." That is excellent, and that is a tremendous help to the policymakers and their staffs. Also, in the course of meeting with legislators, the tone of the meeting is important. One of the things, even if it is a contentious meeting, one of the things that I like to make sure I do at the beginning, at the end, is to thank them, and it's simple courtesy. Thank them for meeting with us. Appreciate it. And if you've got time, take a picture with them. And well, why do you want to do that? Well, that says a couple of things. Well, it's a great way to end a meeting, because what happens when you're taking a picture? What does everybody do? Well, they're smiling. So you're ending on an upbeat note, even again if it's been a contentious meeting. But that also says to them, "Oh, that's right. We're taking a picture here." So they're going to have proof that they have met with with me and tag me, the policymaker, in all of this. And then what goes above or below that picture of us all is going to be up to them, the advocates, when they walk out of here. So it again is a subtle way of reinforcing the message to the policymaker of, hey, you've got folks who are very concerned about this issue and who are watching. They're watching what you do. They're watching what position you take. And they're communicating that to their friends, their families, members of their communities, the folks online, the folks in social media. So it's a very, very effective way. Excuse me. I've talked in the past about, again, having ways of making sure that you're remembered. You'll see lots of folks use props of various things. Maybe it's a funny looking hat, maybe it's a huge button. One of the most effective props I've seen, but one of the most effective props I've seen is the hanging of the hands for Children's Week. I mean, that's just amazing when you have the thousands and thousands of children's hands from all over the state hanging in the rotunda of the Capitol, so that everybody, all of the members of the legislature, the governor, his executive staff, the staff of the the lobbyists, everybody who's going through there sees those thousands of hands hanging there. I think that is just amazing and very effective, and it is a wonderful way to help reinforce continually that message of, hey, this is the importance of these issues. Look at all these little hands. And when you're testifying before a committee, and typically you will have an opportunity at some point to testify before a committee about a particular issue. But when you're testifying before a committee, if you bring along your child or other people's children, that gets attention. That gets attention really quickly. Members of the committee will be typically on their best behavior when there are children there. And again, I don't mean that disrespectfully, but lots of times you will see, if you're up, standing up testifying in front of a committee, you'll see the members of the committee maybe, talking to their staff members, talking to each other. Looking at things, a drink or a bathroom break or something. And many times it can be very distracting because you feel like, okay, well, I'm supposed to be talking to the members of this committee, and it looks like nobody's paying attention to me. One, don't get discouraged, because every word that you say into the microphone is transcribed as part of the official record of the legislature. So make sure that you don't let that distract you, and you are able to get your presentation into the record. But two, also, again, when you have a child with you, then people sit down, people smile, people pay attention. The most effective use of this that I've ever seen, and again, not disrespectfully, but it's part of advocacy. You use whatever is available to you, of course, ethically and legally, but to advance your cause. And several years ago, we were involved in the effort to get passed to require insurance companies to cover certain therapies for kids on the autism spectrum. And there was one single mother there who had driven several hours, and she had her 12-year-old daughter, I believe, there with her. And the mother got up and gave a very impassioned presentation to the committee, told them what this was really doing to her family and what the potential coverage could really help do for her family. And then she asked her daughter to sing a song. The young woman sang a song. Um, Everybody was in tears. Everybody, sitting in the audience in the committee room, all the members of the committee. It was a very, very moving moment, and it became, astronomically and exponentially more powerful because a couple of minutes after she finished the song, the doors at the back of the committee room, were open. Governor Crisp came to the podium and said, "I was, watching this young woman in my office on the Florida Channel, and I can't say this, any more eloquently. You need to support this bill. You need to vote for this bill." And bill passed the committee unanimously. That's the power that these types of things can have, and you can harness that power. You can do exactly that, and again, it's go from one stage to another to another. Now, oftentimes also, let me talk about committees for just another second. When you are preparing to go to Tallahassee or go to Washington, but especially from Tallahassee, and you may be testifying before a committee. If you are part of a group, if you're part of a coalition, check your egos and check your feelings at the door. And go with your strongest game, go with your strongest players, go with your strongest points, and recognize that the strategy can change at a moment's notice. Don't get hurt, don't get offended, and don't take it personally, regardless of how many hours you've traveled, how many miles you've traveled, how much time you may have spent in putting into preparing for your testimony before a committee. Because I've seen it happen countless times where a bill will be coming up for be ready to testify about the bill, and they will have all their presentations ready, and they're ready to go, and they're charged up, and they're psyched up, and they're nervous, and many of them will probably not have testified before committees before, so right before the bill is called for hearing, one of the other parties in the coalition will come up and say, so and so and so and so and so are going to vote for this, so we've got this down. So we don't need to have 4 people like we had planned talk to try to persuade members of the committee. We really need to have only 2 people, or maybe even 1 person talk, and the rest of you who are going to talk really need you to go to this person's office and that person's office and focus on trying to get them, because they're on the next committee and that's the next stop, and we got to make sure that they're on board and they're going to support this bill. That's the most effective thing that you can do right now. Do it. Do it. Because you need to keep your eye on the ball. And what's most important? What is most important is not your feelings, not how long you've prepared, not how far you've traveled. The most important thing is the success of your cause, whatever that cause is. And that is what you have to focus on. So that is incredibly important. Now, in preparing to tell your story to legislators, and how do you get organized? How do you make sure that your case is as clearly stated as possible. There's a great app that's been prepared by the Governor's Developmental Disabilities Council in Minnesota. The DD Council in Minnesota has done tremendous work in grassroots advocacy, and I would very much recommend that you get the Telling Your Story app. It's available for Android and Apple devices, and if you're really serious about pursuing advocacy, visit the website for the Governor's DD Council, and they have extensive resources and extensive modules and role-playing exercises and so forth. But those, especially the app, will help you practice, will help you record what you're going to say, so you can see how you look making a presentation. You can, and just real quick, what do I mean by an elevator pitch? An elevator pitch is basically that. It's what would you say to somebody to try to persuade them to support your issue if all you had was the 30 seconds that you're going to be standing next to them in an elevator. It is virtually inevitable that in the course of trying to get whatever it is that you want to be passed in the legislature or in Congress, you're going to be in exactly that type of situation. You're going to be in the situation where the lawmaker or the staff member will say, "Look, I don't have even 5 minutes to meet with you on this issue, but come walk with me. I'm on my way to the chamber floor, or I'm on my way to a committee meeting. Come walk with me and tell me what you want me to hear." That's what you'll have. You'll have 30 seconds. You'll have a minute, and you've got to be prepared. What are your strongest points? And again, you want to cut out all the fluff. You want to cut out everything except the strongest, most important things. And the Telling Your Story app will certainly help. One last thing that I want to mention is the importance of staff members in the process, especially in the Florida legislature. I've seen many people over the years come to Tallahassee, and they may feel that because of how much money they have, or their position back home, or who they know, or whatever it may be, that they can come into the legislature and start trying to push people around. That's never a good idea. It's not polite. It's not good manners. And you will be amazed how much of the business of the legislature gets by and is done simply on the basis of good manners, but especially with staff members. I've seen lots of people walk up and to a legislator's office and be very rude to the person at the front desk and start demanding this, that, and the other thing. And that's not a good idea, because that person is not an administrative support person out front. Not that it's okay to treat administrative support people like that, but those people who are sitting there in those offices, and if you push them around, or you try to push them around, or you act rude towards them, you're essentially killing your issue. Because if you're going to act like that towards them, they will remember you. Just like you remember, people who treat you unkindly, those folks will remember you. They will make sure they remember your issue. And again, they will very likely make sure that their boss, the representative or the senator, will not support your issue. So it's not a good idea at all to act that way. The staff members, again, have a lot of responsibility. and they have a lot of influence many times on how their representatives or senators vote, simply because, again, they're doing virtually all of the support work and gathering the information and making sure that their boss is kept up to date and fully informed. So with that, thank you very much. I appreciate your attention. If you have any more questions, please feel free to contact me. My contact information is at the end of the presentation slides that hopefully you've already received. And if not, give me a call, drop me an email, and I'll be happy to discuss it with you. So thank you very much, and best of luck.